Hey, I'm Melanie. And what happened at my sister's graduation turned my world upside down. I thought it was her big day, but my stepdaughter humiliated me in front of everyone. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the real shock came when the projector exposed her real identity. A secret, a lie so deep it shattered everything. I thought I knew my family, but what I uncovered made me question if I'd ever truly been a part of it. Can you imagine being betrayed like that? What happens next? Stick around to find out. The day began like any other. The sun had barely risen, and I found myself already on my feet, moving around the house with the same routine that had become a part of me. My hands worked without thinking, preparing the coffee, arranging the breakfast table, all while my mind was a million miles away. I was thinking of the day ahead. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration, a day for my stepdaughter Brittany's graduation. Yet all I could feel was the weight of years of sacrifice that had slowly eroded my sense of self-worth. I was 60, a mother who had spent a lifetime giving to my children, my husband, my family. My entire existence had been dedicated to them, while I was the one left behind, invisible, as if my needs were secondary. My mind wandered to the years that had passed, the dinners I had made, the laundry I had folded, the countless moments where I had been the rock, the foundation, the one who always made sure everything was taken care of. And now, as the years slipped by, I was left feeling nothing more than a shadow in the background of everyone else's lives. Today, my family would gather, and I would be there, quietly in the background as Brittany took center stage. I should have felt proud of her. I should have been excited for the life she was beginning, the milestones she was crossing. But all I could feel was bitterness. This was supposed to be my reward, the moment where I felt seen, valued, but instead, I felt overlooked, taken for granted. As I moved through the motions, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Brittany's laughter coming from the kitchen. It was light and carefree, as if nothing in the world could trouble her. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her interact with her father, her face full of joy, while I felt like an outsider in my own home. It was the same old story. She was the golden child, and I was just there. As I helped her get ready for the ceremony, my mind raced. I couldn't help but think of how this day would unfold, how she would shine, and how I would be left to stand at the back of the crowd, unnoticed. The weight of years of feeling invisible pressed down on me, and yet I had no choice but to smile and play the part. The ceremony was held in a large auditorium, filled with families all brimming with pride. I stood at the back, my eyes fixed on Brittany as she walked across the stage. Her smile was bright, her face full of ambition, and in that moment I felt a pang of envy. She had everything ahead of her. I had nothing but the quiet ache of being forgotten. I cheered for her, clapping along with the crowd, but inside, I felt hollow. I had given so much of myself for this family, and yet it seemed to mean nothing to them. As the ceremony ended, I found myself sitting in the back of the reception hall, watching Brittany interact with everyone around her. It was as if I didn't exist. The conversation swirled around me, but none of it was for me. I was just the one who made sure everything was ready, the one who cleaned up, the one who supported in silence. That's when I felt it. The first shift. Brittany's coldness, the way she avoided looking at me. It was subtle, but I could feel the tension in the air. It was like a wall had been erected between us. I had been the one to raise her, to care for her, and yet, in that moment, it felt like I was nothing more than a stranger in her eyes. The reception started, and I watched as Brittany was surrounded by her friends and family. They all gushed over her, praising her accomplishments, making her the center of attention. Meanwhile, I stood on the outskirts, watching the world turn without me. But that's when it happened. Brittany walked over to me, a glass of punch in her hand, and with a smirk she said, "You know, it's funny. You're kind of like the invisible woman in this family. You do all the work, but no one notices." I froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The words stung, sharper than anything I had ever felt. It was a public humiliation, a slap in the face that left me speechless. I had raised her, loved her, given her everything. And this was how she repaid me? I wanted to yell, to confront her right then and there, but I couldn't. All I could do was smile through the pain and retreat into the shadows once again. As the night wore on, I found myself standing near the projector screen, my mind spinning with what had just happened. That's when it all changed. The projector flickered to life, displaying a series of family photos. At first, it was innocent enough, pictures of Brittany as a child, family vacations, happy moments. But then, something caught my eye. The projector skipped to an image that shouldn't have been there. It was an old photo, one I had never seen before. It was a picture of Brittany from a few years ago, but there was something off about it. She looked different, darker, colder. I could feel my pulse quicken as the image shifted. Another photo, then another. Slowly, the images began to reveal a different side of Brittany, a side that had been hidden from all of us. I could hardly believe what I was seeing. The projector had inadvertently revealed Brittany's secret. She had been lying to all of us, manipulating situations to her advantage. The lies, the half-truths, the image of the perfect child she had created. It was all unraveling right before my eyes. The shock hit me like a wave, knocking the breath out of me. I stood there, frozen, as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Brittany had been playing a game all along, and I had been a fool to not see it. She had painted herself as the victim, the innocent one, while everyone else, including me, had been left to clean up the mess. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but something inside me stopped me. I knew this wasn't just about Brittany. This was about everything that had led to this moment. My years of silence, my acceptance of my place in this family, my willingness to be the invisible woman. But not anymore. Not after seeing the truth. The choice I had to make was clear. I could continue to stay silent and allow this to keep happening, or I could confront the truth and take back my dignity. As I walked out of the reception hall, I didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain, I would never be the same again. I had seen the truth, and now it was time for me to decide what to do with it. The weight of the day hung heavily on me. The words that Brittany had thrown at me earlier replayed in my mind like a broken record. Invisible woman. It echoed in my head, cutting deeper than any insult I'd received before. It wasn't just what she said, it was the way she said it. The public display of disrespect. I was used to being ignored, yes, but this felt different. This was deliberate, and it hurt more than I'd ever let on. I couldn't shake off the feeling of humiliation. The celebration I had expected to feel pride in had turned into a nightmare. It was supposed to be about Brittany, about the joy of seeing her graduate, but instead, all I could feel was the sharp sting of betrayal. I had been the one who raised her. I had sacrificed everything for this family, and this is how I was treated. How had it come to this? I sat alone for a moment, lost in thought, the party still going on around me. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all felt like a distant hum, barely registering in my ears. I stared at the projector screen, where the images of Brittany's childhood moments had been flashing. There was something almost poetic about it. How everyone else could live in their illusion of happiness while I was left to bear the weight of the truth. A truth no one else wanted to see. As the images played on, something caught my eye. It was subtle at first, a slight change in the slideshow. The pictures shifted, and suddenly, I saw a different side of Brittany, a side that no one else seemed to notice. There, on the screen, was a photograph I'd never seen before. It was an older photo. Brittany looked different, colder somehow. The smile on her face was forced, and the look in her eyes, it was like seeing a stranger. I felt my heart skip a beat. What was this? A mistake? Maybe just an odd photo? But the more I stared, the more I realized it wasn't just one photo. It was a whole set. The projector kept flashing images that I didn't recognize. Brittany in a different light. A side of her that was hidden, and yet right in front of me all along. I felt my hands start to shake. The room around me seemed to fade, the voices of the partygoers becoming muffled, as if they were all on another plane of existence. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind was racing. What did this mean? What was Brittany hiding? The images continued, and as they did, the truth became undeniable. Brittany had been living a lie, creating a narrative of herself as the innocent, perfect child, while secretly, she had been hiding something much darker. I could see it now, clearly, how she had manipulated situations to suit her needs, how she had played everyone in the family, including me. All these years, I had believed in her, trusted her, and now it was clear that I had been nothing more than a pawn in her game. I felt sick, betrayed. It wasn't just the shock of the photos, it was the realization that I had been so blinded by my own loyalty to this family that I had failed to see what was right in front of me. The family dynamic had always been so carefully constructed, so polished that I had been foolish enough to buy into it. But now, the cracks were showing, and they were wide enough to drive a truck through. I needed to confront Brittany. No, I needed to confront this family. The lies, the manipulation, it all had to stop. But before I could act on that, I had to process what I had just seen. I stood there for a long moment, absorbing the weight of it all, the shock slowly turning into anger. The humiliation was gone, replaced by something much sharper. I wasn't just hurt, I was ready to fight. But then, as I stood there, still staring at the screen, Brittany appeared in front of me. Her eyes were wide, her face flushed. The confident, untouchable version of her was gone. For the first time, she looked afraid. "Melanie," she said, her voice shaky, "this is a mistake. You don't know what you're seeing. It's all taken out of context." I stood frozen for a moment, processing her words. How could she still lie, even in the face of the truth? I wanted to scream at her, to tell her that I knew. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the years of keeping quiet, of pretending to be the good, supportive mother. Maybe it was because I knew this wasn't just about her. It was about everything. About how I had allowed myself to be silenced for so long. "Brittany," I said, my voice steady, but with an edge to it. "There's no excuse for this. I saw the truth. And now it's time for you to face it." Her face twisted with frustration, and for a moment, she looked like she was about to lash out. But then she took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. "You don't understand. You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "I see you for who you really are now, and I won't let you play this game anymore." Her eyes narrowed, and for the briefest of moments, I saw a flicker of fear. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by her usual mask of arrogance. I turned away from her then, my mind racing. I couldn't believe this was happening, that the day I had dreaded had finally arrived. I had spent my entire life making excuses for this family, for Brittany, for Charles, but no more. The truth was out, and I wasn't going to let it go. I walked away from the projector, feeling the weight of what I had learned pressing on me. I needed time to think, to process, but there was no denying it anymore. The truth had been exposed, and now I had to decide what to do with it. As I left the reception, my thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, disbelief, but also something else, something I hadn't felt in years: empowerment. I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were, not after this. The family I had fought for, the family I had sacrificed for, was broken. But it wasn't beyond repair. It was time for me to take control of my own life, to stop pretending that everything was fine. I had made the decision, but I still didn't know how to move forward. I could feel the weight of the change ahead. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let myself be invisible anymore. The silence that followed my confrontation with Charles felt suffocating. The weight of the truth was still settling in my bones, but amidst all the chaos, a sense of clarity began to take root in me. I'd been carrying this burden for years, long years of sacrifice, of ignoring my own needs for the sake of others. I had always been the caretaker, the one who held everything together, the one who loved too much and asked for too little. But now I felt something new, something stirring deep within me. I was done. I had given too much, allowed myself to be overlooked, and let my family's expectations dictate my happiness for far too long. I could no longer live in the shadows, waiting for someone to notice me, to acknowledge the quiet strength I had given them all these years. No more pretending, no more silence. As I sat alone, the anger that had bubbled beneath the surface began to cool, replaced by something more profound: empowerment. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel my worth. I didn't need anyone's approval. I wasn't invisible, and I would no longer let anyone treat me as if I were. The truth was out there now, and it was mine to hold, to wield. I closed my eyes, replaying the images of Brittany on the projector, the ones that revealed her dark past. My chest tightened. I knew it wasn't just about her. It was about the years I'd spent in denial. But that was over now. I could see it all clearly. I could see Brittany, the manipulative liar she'd always been, hiding behind the facade of innocence. I could see Charles, too, complicit in his silence, in his cowardice. No, it was time to confront them both. The plan started to take shape in my mind as I thought about the confrontation ahead. I was no longer afraid of what they might say, of the lies they might try to spin. I was ready to stand my ground. This time, I wasn't going to back down. I spent the next few hours strategizing. And I needed to be sharp, calculated. I wasn't going to let Brittany manipulate me again, and I wasn't going to let Charles deflect from the truth. I had to take control of the narrative. My narrative. I reached out to Sandra, an old friend who had known about the dysfunction in my family long before I had admitted it to myself. She had always been a quiet ally, the one who saw the cracks long before I did. She was the person I needed on my side now, someone who understood the family's toxic dynamics. She agreed to help me prepare for what was coming. "Melanie, you've been through too much to stay silent any longer," she said. "It's time to expose the truth. No more protecting them." I could feel her words resonating deep inside me. She was right. I had spent my life protecting everyone else, and for what? A family that didn't even acknowledge my pain? A husband who'd turned a blind eye to my suffering? It was time to stop hiding, to stop pretending. The confrontation with Brittany would come first. I couldn't let her get away with her lies anymore. She had manipulated my entire family, and I was going to make sure she knew I saw through it all. I couldn't wait. I arranged the meeting for the following day. I didn't need a big crowd, just the two of us, face to face. I needed her to know that I was done with her games. When Brittany walked into the room, her face was a mask of confidence. But I could see the cracks. I could see the way she stood a little too straight, the way her eyes darted around, trying to find some escape. I wasn't going to give her that. "You've got some explaining to do, Brittany," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We both know what I saw. Those pictures, the truth about your past, don't even try to deny it." Her eyes widened. The cocky smile that had always been so present on her face faltered. She took a step back, but I didn't let her off the hook. I wasn't backing down. "What do you think you're doing?" she spat, her voice suddenly defensive. "That's not what it looked like. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly well," I said, taking a step forward. "I understand that you've been lying to me and everyone else in this family, and I'm done with it." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I could see the walls go up. But it didn't matter. She had nowhere to hide now. "I've been nothing but honest with you," she said, her voice rising. "You're just mad because you don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and showed her the images, the proof of everything she had tried to hide, the proof that I was no longer blind to the manipulation, the lies she had told. Her face drained of color as she stared at the screen. "You can't deny it anymore," I said. "This is who you really are, and I won't sit back and let you destroy this family any longer." The air between us was thick with tension. I could see her trembling, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not this time. "I don't care if you're angry," I said, my voice steady. "What I care about is the truth. And the truth is, you've been using us, all of us, for your own gain. And I'm not going to let it continue." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her mask had shattered. She was exposed. Just then, Charles walked in, his face full of concern. He glanced between me and Brittany, sensing the tension in the room. "What's going on here?" he asked, trying to take control. I turned to him, my anger flaring. "What's going on is that I'm finally telling the truth. You've let this happen for far too long, Charles. You've let Brittany manipulate us all, and you've done nothing." He looked at me, guilt flashing across his face. He didn't say anything at first, and I could see the shame in his eyes. But then, He tried to deflect. "You don't understand," he said. "I didn't want to cause trouble. I just wanted to keep the peace." "No, Charles," I said, my voice sharp. "You didn't want to cause trouble because you were too weak to stand up for what's right. You've allowed all of this to happen, and now it's time to face the consequences." The silence hung in the air for a long moment before he finally spoke. I know. I should have done something," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I didn't want to lose my family." "And look what it's cost us," I shot back. "Look at the mess we're in now." I felt a mix of devastation and relief wash over me. I had confronted Brittany, and now, for the first time, Charles was admitting his part in all of this. The truth had come out. But even as the words hung in the air, I knew this was just the beginning. The confrontation had shattered everything, but I was done pretending. I needed to take control of my life. I left the room, my mind racing with everything that had happened. The weight of the confrontation was heavy, but there was a sense of clarity now. I wasn't afraid anymore. The truth had set me free, and now I was ready for whatever came next. I sat in my car, staring at the family home in the rearview mirror. The house that had once symbolized my life, my family, now felt like a prison. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm free. But freedom comes with its own cost, I whispered to myself, the words heavy in my chest. The silence in the house was heavy. It sat like a weight on my chest, pressing down, suffocating the space. After everything that had happened, the confrontation with Charles and Brittany, I needed time to think, to breathe, to understand where I stood. I sat in the quiet of the living room, alone with my thoughts. The flicker of the lamp on the table beside me cast long shadows, mirroring the weight of everything that had come to light. I wasn't sure how to feel. There was a sense of relief from speaking my truth, from finally pulling back the curtain and exposing the lies, but there was also a deep sadness. Sadness for the years I had wasted, for the way my family had treated me, for the way I had let them. I thought back to all the moments when my feelings had been disregarded, the countless times I had been dismissed, told to quiet down, to be grateful for what I had. I had lived my life in the background, constantly giving and giving, but never receiving the respect I deserved. It was a bitter realization, but it was mine now, and I wasn't going to let it go. The pain of it all hit me like a wave. But then, just as quickly, it was replaced with something else. Something sharper. Empowerment. I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life, and I wasn't about to stop now. It was time for action. I couldn't stay silent any longer. The lies, the manipulation, it all needed to come to an end. I had no idea what would happen next, but one thing was certain. I was done being the invisible woman. I picked up the phone. It was time to make the call. I needed legal advice. I needed to know what my options were. I needed to understand the consequences of what I was about to do. I called a lawyer who had known me for years, someone who had seen the dysfunction in my family but had never said anything. Someone who had been too afraid to speak up, but now, maybe, could help me find a way to stand up for myself. We met the next day. The lawyer, John, was everything I had hoped for, calm, collected, and blunt. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He told me straight, "You've got evidence. You've got the truth on your side, but you need to be prepared for the fallout. This isn't going to be easy." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. I wasn't naive enough to think this would be simple. But I was done with the lies. I had spent too long trying to protect everyone else, too long pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. It was time for the truth to come out. I gathered everything, text messages, pictures, recordings, everything I had that proved Brittany's manipulation and Charles' complicity. I wasn't going to back down this time. I would fight for my dignity, for my right to be heard, to be seen. The decision to go public wasn't one I took lightly. But after everything that had happened, it was clear. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who had been lied to, manipulated, and controlled by people who should have known better. As I prepared for the next confrontation, I could feel the fire inside me growing. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for everyone who had ever been silenced, overlooked, or made to feel invisible. This fight was bigger than me. It was about reclaiming my life. But then Brittany struck back. She didn't take kindly to my plans. She'd always been the one in control, the one who spun the lies and got away with it. Now, seeing that I wasn't backing down, she launched an attack. Brittany's retaliation was swift. She began calling me unstable, claiming I was emotionally unfit to handle the truth, that I was just angry and out of control. She painted me as the villain in our family's story, using her charm to convince others that I was the one causing all the problems. And it worked. Some of the family believed her. They had always been on her side, never questioning her motives, never seeing through her lies. It hurt more than I expected. The people I thought I could rely on were now questioning me. They were siding with her, too scared to face the truth. But not everyone. Sandra, my old friend, stayed by my side. She had witnessed the dysfunction for years and had never said anything, always staying in the background. But now she was here, ready to help me take the stand I needed. She was my ally, and I clung to her support. The pain of the family's division hit me hard. I had always prided myself on being the glue that held us together. But now, I saw the cracks, the fractures, the lies that had been festering for years. It was all coming to a head. I couldn't go back. I had already made the decision. The family meeting was set. It was time to lay everything out on the table. As I sat at the table waiting for everyone to arrive, my heart raced. I was nervous, yes, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had nothing left to lose. When they walked in, I looked at them all, the ones who had allowed this to happen. Brittany, her eyes darting around the room, trying to gauge who was on her side. Charles, standing tall, trying to act like nothing was wrong. I knew what I had to do. "I'm done with the silence," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done hiding my truth, and I'm done letting you all lie to me. You've made me feel invisible for too long, and I won't stand for it anymore." The words were out, and I felt the power shift. But then came the bombshell. As I confronted Charles about his role in all of this, something unexpected happened. Charles, the man who had always been so passive, so unwilling to stand up for me, finally cracked. He admitted to his part in the dysfunction, in enabling Brittany's manipulation. He even said he had known about her lies but had been too weak to confront her. I couldn't believe it. This was the man I had given everything for. And he had known, and still done nothing. The anger inside me burned brighter, but there was relief too. The truth was out. The weight of the lies was starting to lift, even if the damage was done. But as the conversation came to a close, I couldn't ignore the reality of what had just happened. My family was broken. There was no turning back. I left the meeting feeling a mix of exhaustion and triumph. I had said everything I needed to say, but it felt like the real battle was just beginning. I walked out of the house, feeling the cool evening air on my face. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here anymore. As I stood outside, looking at the house that had once been home, I felt a shift inside me. I was free, but it came with a cost. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to answer to anyone, but at the same time, I was scared of what the future held, scared of losing the family I had fought so hard to keep. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let fear control me anymore. I stared at the reflection of the house in my rearview mirror, wondering if I should just drive away. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm free, but freedom comes with its own cost. The quiet in my house felt different now, darker, yet liberating. I stood at the threshold of a decision that had been years in the making. The weight of the family's expectations, their manipulations, all that emotional baggage, it was unbearable. But what hurt the most wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that I had allowed myself to be trapped in this cycle for so long. The anger had been building for years, and now it was a burning flame, one that I couldn't ignore any longer. I'd spent so much of my life trying to please everyone, making myself small so they could all shine. But what had I gotten in return? Nothing but disregard and manipulation. I had given so much of myself, but in the end, it didn't matter. I was just the silent, invisible woman in their eyes. Now, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about Brittany or Charles anymore. It wasn't about them trying to control my every move. It was about me taking control of my life. I had to stop letting their drama dictate my happiness. I had to take back my dignity. The idea of leaving my family, of cutting them off, gnawed at me. How could I possibly do that? They were my family. But I had to admit, the pain of staying was greater than the fear of leaving. I had been a prisoner of their expectations for so long, and now it was time to set myself free. I couldn't live in the shadows anymore. I couldn't let my family continue to tear me down, make me feel less than. If I stayed, I'd always be the background character in their story, but if I left, I could finally be the author of my own. I needed advice, so I called a lawyer. John had been someone I'd known for years, a quiet man, but someone who had seen the dysfunction in my family. He was the one who finally told me what I needed to hear. "You've been suffering in silence for too long, Melanie. If you want to take control of your life, you have to start by taking control of your legal rights. This isn't just about family issues, it's about reclaiming your voice." That conversation was a turning point. I realized I couldn't just keep quiet anymore. I needed to gather the evidence, expose the lies, and make sure my story was heard. I went through everything I had: texts, emails, recordings, Brittany's manipulations, Charles's complicity. They were all there. "Prepare yourself," John told me. "You're about to make waves. Are you ready for the fallout?" The truth was, I wasn't sure. But what choice did I have? I had already lost so much. If I didn't act now, I'd lose even more of myself. I couldn't allow Brittany or anyone else to continue to define me. The next few days were a blur. Brittany's retaliation began. She spread lies about me, calling me unstable, emotionally unfit to handle the truth. She worked the family, trying to turn them against me. The same family who had always stood by her, never questioning her, were now questioning me. She painted herself as the victim, as she always did, and I was the one who had gone mad. The family was divided, and it was painful to watch, but it also opened my eyes. I saw who was really on my side. Sandra, who had always been quiet, reached out to me. She was a support I hadn't expected. "Don't let them silence you, Melanie," she said. "You've been carrying this weight alone for too long. It's time for you to be heard." I didn't know what the future would hold, but I couldn't deny the feeling of empowerment that was slowly rising within me. For once, I was standing up for myself, and no one, no matter how much they tried to manipulate me, was going to take that away. The moment of reckoning came when I called a family meeting. I'd had enough of the secrets, the lies, and the manipulation. Everyone had to be there. I wasn't going to let anyone sidestep this anymore. The day of the meeting arrived, and I could feel the anxiety in the pit of my stomach. But there was something else too, a quiet determination. This would be the moment I stopped hiding, the moment I took back my life. As they walked in, I could see their faces, the ones who had all, in their own ways, let this happen. Charles, trying to act like nothing was wrong. Brittany, sitting there pretending to be innocent, and the rest of the family, some of them looking uncomfortable, others completely unaware of the full picture. I didn't hesitate. I stood tall, looked each of them in the eye, and spoke the truth. "I'm done with pretending," I said. "For years, I've been ignored, manipulated, and disregarded. I've been the one who gave everything, who sacrificed, and for what? To be the invisible woman? No more. I'm done." The room went still. No one spoke. Brittany's face turned red, and Charles shifted uncomfortably in his seat. They were used to me being quiet, to me accepting their abuse, but now I wasn't having it. Then, as if the universe itself had decided to show the family the truth, a new revelation surfaced, something I hadn't anticipated. Charles, in his attempt to deflect blame, accidentally revealed something that shook everyone to the core. It wasn't just Brittany who had caused damage. Charles had been hiding his own secrets. His mishandling of money, his refusal to stand up for me, it had all contributed to the family's problems. For the first time, Charles was caught in the act, admitting that he had known about Brittany's manipulations, but had been too weak to confront her. It was a turning point for me. I had waited so long for this moment, and now the truth was out. The emotional toll of it all was overwhelming, but there was relief in it too. Yet the fallout began almost immediately. Some family members rallied behind me, but others, including Brittany, launched a campaign to discredit me. She spread more lies, attacked me on social media, and tried to paint me as a liar. It was painful, but I knew something now that I hadn't fully understood before. The family I had tried so hard to protect wasn't going to change, not unless I took matters into my own hands. The final decision was mine. The weight of it pressed down on me as I stood in front of my home, looking at the place that had once been filled with love, but now only held memories of manipulation and hurt. I packed my things, leaving behind everything I once thought I couldn't live without. I walked out the door, knowing it was the last time I would step foot in that house. It was final. As I drove away, the sun setting in the rearview mirror, I wondered if I was strong enough to leave it all behind. Could I start fresh? Or would the weight of the past follow me? But for the first time in years, I felt free. And that was enough. I woke up that morning with a sense of clarity that had been a long time coming. The silence around me was different now. Freedom was beginning to settle in, but it wasn't without its weight. It had been a hard choice to leave, but as the days passed, I realized that staying in the family's toxic web would have been far worse than walking away. I had spent too many years living under their expectations, their manipulations, always trying to please, always trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix. Looking back, I could see how every step I took for them, each sacrifice, each compromise, had led me here. It was no longer just about protecting them, it was about protecting me. The family that I had once given everything to was now a shell of what I had hoped it would be. Their lies, their manipulation, their disregard, it was all too much. But today, I wasn't the woman who had to bow her head in silence anymore. I was done with that. What hurt was that I had spent so many years believing I was helping them, only to realize I was being used. No one ever asked what I needed or how I felt. It was always about them, Charles, Brittany, the kids. And now, I was done. I didn't know what my future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. I was ready to take control of my life. It was time to stop surviving and start living. I wasn't going to let their drama ruin me anymore. But with this newfound clarity came the realization that I wasn't done yet. I had to face Brittany. I had to stand up to her, once and for all. No more games, no more lies. She wasn't going to push me around anymore. I picked up the phone and called her. My hands shook as I dialed, but I knew I had to do this. I wasn't backing down anymore. Brittany, I need to talk to you, now. The confrontation was inevitable, and when it finally came, the tension between us was palpable. She walked into the room, her usual smirk plastered on her face, but it quickly faded when she saw the determination in my eyes. "You're really doing this?" she sneered, crossing her arms. "You're really going to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away," I shot back. "I'm taking back control. I've had enough of being treated like I don't matter. You and Charles have manipulated this family for too long, and I won't stand for it anymore." Her face twisted with annoyance. "You're too old for this, Melanie. You don't know what you're talking about." I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of humor. It was a laugh of disbelief. "You're not going to gaslight me anymore. I know what you've been doing. You think I didn't see it? You think I didn't hear you?" Brittany's expression faltered, and I could see the fear in her eyes for the first time, but she wasn't done yet. She attempted to turn the situation around, as she always did, twisting my words and playing the victim. "You're crazy. You know that? You're losing it. Everyone in this family can see it." But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. "I'm not crazy. I'm not losing it. I'm just done. You've lied to this family. You've lied to me. And I won't let you do it anymore." The fight that followed wasn't pretty. She tried to scream over me, to talk over me, but I kept pushing, kept standing my ground. "You don't get to play the innocent one anymore, Brittany. Not with me, not with anyone." The silence between us hung in the air for a moment before she spat out, "You're ruining everything. You think anyone's going to believe you? You're the crazy one. You always have been." "You're wrong," I said, the finality in my voice ringing clear. "I'm not crazy. And I'm not backing down. The truth's out now. You can't hide behind your lies anymore. And with that, I turned my back on her. But just when I thought I had won, Charles showed up. He walked in, trying to mediate, trying to calm things down like he always did. "What's going on here? We don't need to make this worse than it already is." I could feel my blood boiling as I turned to face him. "You don't get to play the peacekeeper anymore, Charles. Not when you've been enabling her this whole time." He raised an eyebrow, trying to act innocent. "What are you talking about?" "You've been turning a blind eye to all of it. You've let Brittany do whatever she wanted, and you've done nothing. You've let her manipulate me, you've let her destroy this family, and you've been a part of it." He tried to play it off, but I wasn't done. "You've been too afraid to stand up to her, too afraid to stand up to anyone. And now, you've made this mess. You've made this family fall apart." Charles's face twisted in frustration. "Melanie, this isn't helping. You're making it worse." "Don't try to guilt-trip me, Charles," I said, my voice sharp. "You're just as guilty as she is, and I'm done with both of you." The weight of those words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Charles stood there, his mouth agape, but I didn't care. I had said what I needed to say, and I had drawn the line. There was no going back. The fallout was inevitable. Word of the confrontation spread through the family like wildfire. Brittany's smear campaign intensified, painting me as unstable, as the villain. She spread lies and rumors, using her charm to turn people against me. Some of my children didn't understand, couldn't understand, and they started to side with Brittany. They accused me of betraying them, of being selfish. The family was fracturing, but I was no longer afraid of their judgment. I had made my choice. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, someone I hadn't expected reached out to me, Carla, my cousin. She sent me a message telling me she understood what I was going through, that she was proud of me for standing up for myself. That small act of kindness meant the world to me. It reminded me that not all of my family was toxic, that some of them truly cared. It gave me a glimmer of hope in the middle of the storm. But even with Carla's support, doubt crept in. The emotional toll of cutting ties with my children, my siblings, it was heavy. The guilt gnawed at me. Was I doing the right thing? Could I have done more? I stood in front of my house that night, staring at the door, and for a brief moment, I considered going back. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to fix things, but then I remembered why I left. The years of mistreatment, the lies, the manipulation. I couldn't go back to that. But just as I turned to leave, there they were. Brittany and Charles, standing at my door. "Melanie, come on, we need to talk," Charles said, his voice softer than I expected. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "No, I'm done. I'm not coming back." But inside, I felt a tug. Something pulled me to them, something from the past, some feeling of obligation, of love, even though it had been twisted and broken. "I can't go back. Not after everything," I whispered to myself. But still, the question lingered. Why does it feel like I'm being pulled back in? I walked into the family gathering with my heart pounding, the weight of everything I'd been through pressing down on me. It was the moment I had been preparing for. The air was thick, tense with unresolved anger, accusations, and guilt. I had no illusions left about the situation. I knew this confrontation was inevitable. But it didn't make it any easier. The moment I stepped into the room, the cold stares hit me like a physical blow. The tension was palpable, and I could already feel the judgment coming from every direction. Brittany's eyes locked onto mine, and I could see the disdain in them. She wasted no time. "You're here to ruin everything, aren't you?" she sneered, as if I was the one who had destroyed the family. "You've abandoned your children, and now you're trying to play the victim." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. Her words felt like old wounds being reopened, but this time, they didn't have the same sting. No. Not anymore. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. "You don't get to twist this anymore, Brittany," I said firmly, my voice steady. "I'm not the one who's been destroying this family. It's you, with your lies and your manipulation. You've poisoned everything." Brittany was quick to retaliate, spitting out her words like venom. "You're not even fit to be a mother anymore. You've made your choice, and now we all have to pay for it." I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. but I refused to let her see me break. I had spent too many years letting her push me around, too many years swallowing her poison and thinking it was my fault. Not anymore. I looked around the room. The kids were there, their eyes full of confusion and hurt. I could see it. Brittany's lies had already begun to sink in. I had spent so much time caring for them, trying to protect them from this, and now they were turning against me. I wanted to scream, to ask them how they could believe her, but I didn't. I had to keep my cool. "Mom," one of my children finally spoke up, his voice shaking with anger. "How could you do this? Why are you abandoning us for her? You know how much this is hurting everyone." The words cut deeper than anything Brittany had said. It was my own flesh and blood turning their back on me, believing the lies that had been fed to them. For a moment, the room seemed to close in around me. My world, the family I had sacrificed everything for, was crumbling before my eyes. But then something shifted in me. I wasn't going to let them destroy me, not anymore. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said, my voice rising with conviction. "I've been giving everything to this family for years, and what have I gotten in return? Lies, manipulation, and betrayal. I've been treated like I don't matter, like my feelings don't count, but I'm done. I'm not going to keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not." Charles, standing off to the side, stepped in, trying to mediate, as he always did. "Now let's all just calm down. This isn't helping anything." I looked at him, the man I had spent so many years with, and I saw him for what he truly was: complicit. He had enabled this. He had stood by while I was slowly destroyed by his daughter's lies and his own refusal to stand up for me. "You're still doing it, Charles," I said, my voice low and steady. "You're still trying to protect her, to sweep everything under the rug. You've been just as guilty as she is. You never once stood up for me, for us. You let her tear this family apart, and now you want to act like you're innocent?" His face flushed with anger, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. I had given him every chance to step up, to be the man I thought he was. But I had been wrong. "You've been passive, Charles. Too scared to do anything, too afraid to upset her. You've allowed this to happen, and I'm done trying to fix something that's broken beyond repair." There was a stunned silence. The weight of what I had said hung in the air, thick with the truth. For a moment, I felt a small spark of relief. It wasn't much, but it was something. I had said what I needed to say. But then, just as I thought I could walk away, Brittany made one final desperate attempt. "You don't get it, do you, Mom?" she said, her voice trembling with fury. "You're all alone now. You've burned every bridge, and now you're going to regret it. You'll see. You'll see what happens when you've pushed everyone away." I could feel my patience thinning, but I held it together. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Brittany. I'm done being your pawn, and I'm done letting you control my life." Her face twisted with rage, but I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of her. She wasn't going to break me anymore. As I stood there, the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This was it. This was the breaking point. The family I had tried to save, the family I had loved so fiercely, was beyond saving. It was broken, beyond repair. And for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of peace. The weight that had been pressing down on me for years was finally starting to lift. But it wasn't over. Brittany's last attempt to break me was far from the end. As I turned to leave, a voice stopped me in my tracks. "Melanie, we need to talk." It was one of the kids. I could see the hurt in their eyes, the confusion. But there was something else, too. Something darker. They had been poisoned by Brittany's lies, and now they were trying to pull me back into the family's chaos. I stood there, caught in the storm of my own making. I had walked away from everything, but was it enough? Could I really leave behind the family that had torn me apart? "I can't go back. Not after everything," I whispered to myself. But the question still lingered. Will I ever be free of them? I could feel it in my bones as soon as I stepped into the room. The air was thick, charged with unspoken tension. Family gathered around, pretending like it was any other day, any other dinner. But I knew better. The calm before the storm never felt more real. I was here for one thing only: to set the record straight. Brittany sat at the head of the table, her eyes darting around, trying to keep control of the room, but I could see the cracks in her facade. It was almost laughable how she thought she could still manipulate the situation. I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't going to stand quietly and let her dictate the narrative. Are you just going to sit there and act like everything's fine? Brittany's voice cut through the silence. She already knew what was coming, but she wasn't ready to give up control just yet. I stayed calm, my hands steady as I set down my coat, my eyes never leaving hers. No, Brittany, not everything is fine. And it's time we all start talking about what's really been going on. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and I could feel the weight of the moment. I wasn't just confronting her. I was confronting everything, every lie, every manipulation, every moment where I let them dictate my life. Just as I was about to speak, my phone buzzed. It was a message, an unexpected piece of information that hit me like a ton of bricks. Brittany's carefully crafted image, her perfect little world, was about to fall apart. The message revealed a secret she had been hiding, something that would tear her apart in front of everyone. My heart raced, but I didn't let it show. I glanced around the room, noticing the small cracks starting to appear in Brittany's carefully constructed armor. She wasn't so untouchable anymore. You're just angry because you didn't get your way, Melanie, Brittany snapped, her voice dripping with venom. This isn't about me. This is about you being selfish, as always. I smiled to myself, the anger I'd felt all these years bubbling up to the surface. She wanted to make me the villain, but I wasn't going to let her, not anymore. I stood up, facing the room. The moment had arrived. The family's eyes were on me, unsure of what I was about to say, but I knew this was my chance to turn the tables. Let's talk about selfish, I began, my voice steady, firm. Let's talk about the years I've spent putting this family above myself, only to be treated like I don't matter. Let's talk about how I've been manipulated and lied to for years, and how you all stood by and let it happen. The room fell silent. Brittany's eyes widened, but she tried to mask it with a snarky smile. You're not fooling anyone, Melanie. You're just trying to make us feel guilty. It's pathetic. But I wasn't done. You're right about one thing, Brittany. I was foolish. I let you control everything. But not anymore. I'm done letting you tear this family apart. I'm done being the one to clean up your messes. As I spoke, the words became easier, flowing with a new confidence. Brittany's smirk faltered, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her perfect image. The person who'd controlled everything, the one who made sure I was always in the background, wasn't so untouchable anymore. The family was starting to shift, the tension in the room palpable. Some looked at me with pity, others with anger, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet, not hiding behind the mask of someone who was always trying to please. But the real twist came next. Just as Brittany tried to deflect with another lie, a family member, a cousin of all people, spoke up. She's telling the truth. I've known for years, but I was too scared to say anything. Brittany's been manipulating all of us, playing both sides. It's time someone said it out loud. The room went dead silent. That was the moment when everything changed. The secret was out, and Brittany's grip on the family started slipping. She turned to Charles, her father, but he didn't come to her defense. Not this time. Charles, caught in the crossfire, tried to calm things down, but his words lacked conviction. Let's not make this worse than it is, he muttered, his usual calm demeanor cracking. But the damage had been done. I looked around the room, the realization settling in. Brittany had always been able to count on Charles to protect her, but this time, even he wasn't strong enough to shield her from the truth. The confrontation reached a boiling point when one of my children spoke up, their voice filled with anger. Why didn't you ever fight for us, Mom? Why are you doing this now? It hit me harder than anything Brittany had said. It wasn't just her manipulation, it was the fact that I had failed them too. I had let her do this to all of us. The guilt threatened to choke me, but I refused to give in. I didn't know how to fight for myself, much less for you, I whispered, my voice shaking for the first time. But I'm learning, and I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago." Brittany, sensing her power slipping, lashed out one final time. "You think this is over? You think you're just going to walk away from us and have everything be fine?" I met her gaze, calm but resolute. "It's over, Brittany. For me, it is. And you can't keep me in your web of lies any longer." As the words left my mouth, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was free. But Brittany wasn't done yet. In a last-ditch effort, she tried to use a secret, something I didn't know about, to turn the tide back in her favor. But instead of bringing me down, it only exposed her weakness. Her attempt backfired, and the last bit of her control shattered. The room was silent, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart in my ears. I had done it. I had turned the tables. But as I stood there, watching the aftermath unfold, the uncertainty lingered. Would the family ever accept the truth? Or would this divide become permanent? "I've spoken my truth," I said quietly, as I turned to leave, my heart heavy. But will they listen? The real test is yet to come. Will I ever find peace with them, or have I lost them forever? The aftermath of that night hung in the air like a thick fog I couldn't shake. It had been hours since I left the confrontation, but my mind was still racing. I stood alone in my living room, feeling the weight of the silence around me. The family was still reeling from everything I'd said, and I was left to process it all on my own. It was strange. On one hand, I felt a sense of relief, like a heavy burden had finally been lifted off my shoulders. On the other, I couldn't help but feel a deep sorrow for what had been lost. My family, the people I thought I knew, were forever changed. The tension from the dinner still lingered in my veins. There was no going back. No matter how much I might have wished things could be different, the truth had been laid bare, and the pieces were scattered. It was up to each of us now to pick them up or leave them behind. I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts. It wasn't easy, not by any means. But I couldn't afford to wallow in regret. I had to move forward. It was time to find peace, even if it meant leaving some people and some memories behind. Just as I was about to sit down and start sorting through the chaos in my mind, my phone buzzed. A message. My heart skipped a beat. It was from Carla, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. The message read, "I've been watching everything unfold, and I just wanted you to know that I'm here. I know things haven't been easy, but I'm proud of you." A small smile tugged at the corners of my lips. For the first time in a long while, I felt like someone truly saw me. It wasn't much, but it was something. Carla had always been one of the few who understood the struggles I'd been through, even if she hadn't always been around to help. I didn't respond immediately, but I held on to her words. It was a lifeline, a reminder that there were people who cared, even if they hadn't been there through it all. The next few days felt like a blur. The family was split down the middle. Some tried to play the role of peacemaker, offering half-hearted apologies, while others doubled down, defending Brittany. My children, my own flesh and blood, seemed unsure of where to stand. Some of them came to me with regret in their eyes, but others were still convinced I had made the wrong choice. And I couldn't help but wonder, had I? Had I alienated myself from everything I knew for the sake of my dignity? I thought of the years I had spent putting the family's needs before mine. How many times had I sacrificed my own happiness, my own well-being, to keep the peace? The guilt still tugged at me, even as I told myself it was time to move on. But the pain of losing my children, the ones I had loved and cared for, made the decision feel heavier than I had imagined. One afternoon, when I was sitting alone in my kitchen, trying to make sense of it all, Brittany called. My heart pounded as I saw her name flash on the screen. I debated whether or not to answer. Part of me was curious if she would admit to any wrongdoing, curious to see if she had learned anything from all of this. But I knew the answer before I even picked up the phone. "Melanie." Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. I wanted to talk. About what happened. I know I've done things that hurt you, and I want to say I'm sorry. I know it won't fix anything, but I think you deserve to hear it." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. My instinct was to brush her off, to tell her it was too little, too late. but I knew I had to listen. "Thank you," I said, my voice flat. "But I can't pretend like everything's fine. I've spent too many years pretending. I'm done." I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be. This wasn't about revenge or forgiveness anymore. This was about my peace, about finally owning my story, no matter what it meant for the people around me. Brittany didn't like it, but she had to accept it. The call ended with no grand resolution, and that was fine. I didn't need her apology to feel whole. As time passed, I began to rebuild my life, slowly, carefully. I started reconnecting with old friends, the ones who had never asked for anything in return. I picked up hobbies I'd long neglected. I even joined a book club just to get out of the house and meet new people. I found joy in the small things again. But one day, while going through old things, I found a letter. It was from an old friend of mine, someone I hadn't heard from in years. The letter wasn't long, but it was enough. She had read about what had been happening with my family, and she wanted me to know that if I ever wanted to start fresh, she was there. The letter reignited something in me. A sense of hope, a glimmer of possibility. Maybe this was the new beginning I'd been searching for. It was a reminder that life, my life, could still hold surprises, even after all the heartache. I didn't have all the answers, and I still didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I had made it through the storm, and now it was time to walk into the light. I had learned that moving on didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean excusing the past, but it meant choosing to live for myself, on my own terms. And that was enough. The world outside my door felt different now, lighter somehow. I wasn't sure if my family would ever understand, but I had come to peace with that. "I've learned to let go," I thought to myself as I stepped out the door, ready to face whatever came next. But will the past ever really leave me? And what if the real battle is yet to come?